I never thought my life would take such a turn. I had built everything with trust. Trust in my wife, trust in my best friend, trust in the foundation of loyalty that I believed held us together. But betrayal doesn't come with a warning. It seeps into your life silently, eroding everything you thought was real until you're left with nothing but anger and disbelief. My name is Daniel Carter, and until recently, I had what most would consider a perfect life. I was 34, married to the love of my life, Emily. We had been together for 8 years, married for 5. She was beautiful, intelligent, and supportive. At least, that's what I thought. My best friend, Ryan, had been by my side since college. He was like a brother to me. We had been through everything together: late-night study sessions, bad breakups, our first jobs. When I married Emily, he was my best man, raising a toast about how we were all family now. I had a stable job in finance, which kept me busy, but I always made time for Emily. We had a nice home, a comfortable life. Sure, we had our occasional arguments. Who doesn't? But nothing that ever made me doubt our love. The first time I sensed something was wrong, it was subtle. Emily had always been affectionate, but suddenly, she seemed distant. Our conversations became shorter, and she was on her phone more often than usual. At first, I thought it was stress from work. She was a marketing executive, and her job could be demanding. Then, there was Ryan. He started coming around more often than usual, but something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first. We had always been close, but suddenly, his jokes felt forced, his laughter a little too loud. He and Emily had always gotten along well, but now, I noticed their glances lingering just a little longer than normal. I brushed it off. Maybe I was overthinking things. But then, there were the unexplained absences. Emily started working late more often, and when I asked her about it, she'd give vague answers. Just a big project, she'd say. One night, as we sat down for dinner, she barely touched her food. Everything okay? I asked. She forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away to check her phone. Something was wrong. Then, the excuses started piling up. Emily was always going out with her work friends, but she never mentioned names. When I asked if I could meet them, she'd say, "Oh, you wouldn't be interested. It's just boring office talk." And Ryan? He started acting strange, too. He was always a confident guy, but now he avoided eye contact when we hung out. He would glance at his phone constantly, as if waiting for something. One night, he bailed on our usual Friday hangout at the bar. Something came up, he said. That was the moment my stomach twisted. It wasn't one thing, but a collection of little things, all stacking up. The way Emily laughed a little too hard at his jokes, how she pulled away from my touch, the way Ryan was suddenly too busy for me but never too busy to text someone. I had to know the truth. I started paying closer attention. Emily's phone was always locked, but one night, while she was in the shower, I noticed her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. My heart pounded as I approached it. I wasn't the type to snoop. I had never felt the need to before, but something inside me screamed that I needed to look. I opened her email. Nothing. Then, I noticed a folder named Work Stuff. I clicked on it, expecting to see presentations or reports. Instead, I found a series of emails between Emily and Ryan. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The messages were coded, but it was clear what they meant. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. We need to be more careful. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. How could they? How could my best friend, the man who stood beside me at my wedding, do this to me? How could my wife, the woman who promised to love me forever, betray me like this? I stared at the screen, my breath heavy, my vision blurred with rage. I had my proof, but this wasn't enough. No, I wasn't just going to confront them. I wasn't going to yell and scream and let them deny it. I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth, and I was going to make them pay. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. The emails between Emily and Ryan weren't just casual flirtation. They were confessions of passion, of stolen nights together, of their twisted little secret. My hands trembled with rage as I scrolled through the messages. I miss you already. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it. Daniel is so clueless. I feel bad, but I can't stop myself. Clueless. That word cut deeper than a knife. I clenched my fists, breathing hard, forcing myself to think. Bursting into a confrontation wouldn't be enough. No, they had hidden this affair for months, maybe longer. If I confronted them now, they'd deny it, make excuses, spin the situation in their favor. No, I needed to be smart. I copied every email, every piece of evidence onto a flash drive. Then, I took screenshots and sent them to a secure folder on my cloud. They wouldn't be able to lie their way out of this. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. Over the next week, I played the part of the oblivious husband. I acted as if nothing had changed, as if I were still the trusting fool they believed me to be. But I was watching, always watching. Emily's lies became easier to catch. "I have a work dinner tonight," she said one evening, barely glancing up from her phone. "Oh yeah? Where?" I asked casually. She hesitated. La Petite Bistro." A quick search on my phone showed the restaurant had been closed for renovations for 2 weeks. My blood boiled, but I kept my face neutral. "Sounds nice," I said. "Enjoy yourself." She smiled, clearly relieved that I wasn't suspicious. She had no idea. I followed her that night. I stayed far behind, my car lights off, keeping to the shadows. Sure enough, she wasn't going to dinner with work colleagues. She pulled into the parking lot of a cheap motel. Ryan's car was already there. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. They thought they were careful. They thought they were clever. But they were nothing more than liars. Pathetic, selfish liars. I took pictures as she entered the room. Then, I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, she emerged, straightening her clothes, her hair slightly tousled. Ryan followed a minute later, looking around like a guilty man. I had all the proof I needed. But still, I didn't confront them. Not yet. I spent the next few days planning my revenge. It wasn't just about catching them. It was about making sure they felt the same humiliation and betrayal they had inflicted on me. First, I gathered all the evidence. Emails, pictures, text messages, even their call logs. I compiled it into a detailed document, leaving no room for doubt. Then, I created a fake email account and scheduled an email blast to be sent out at the perfect moment. Next, I prepared for the confrontation. Ryan had invited me over to his place for a small get-together with friends. Emily would be there, too, of course. Perfect. The night of the gathering, I walked in with a calm smile, holding my secret close. Ryan greeted me like nothing was wrong, clapping me on the back. "Glad you made it, man." Emily kissed me on the cheek, playing the part of the devoted wife. I forced myself to stay composed. Just a little longer. We laughed, we drank, we played card games. The whole time, I watched them. Watched how they stole glances at each other, how their bodies leaned slightly toward one another. It made me sick. Then it was time. I stood up, tapping my glass. "Hey, everyone, I just want to say something." The room quieted down. Emily smiled at me, oblivious to what was coming. "I just want to thank all of you for being such great friends," I began. "And I especially want to thank my beautiful wife, Emily, for always being honest and loyal." She beamed. Ryan smirked. I pulled out my phone. And since honesty is so important, I thought we could all celebrate some real truth tonight. I pressed send. The scheduled email went out. Within seconds, everyone's phones buzzed. Confused murmurs filled the room as they checked their devices. Then, silence. Dead, suffocating silence. Emily's face went pale as she stared at the emails, the pictures. Ryan shot to his feet. "What the hell is this?" I smiled coldly. "Oh, you don't recognize your own words? Maybe you should refresh your memory." Emily turned to me, her hands shaking. "Daniel, I cut her off. Don't. Just don't." Ryan's face contorted with rage. "You had no right." "No right?" I laughed bitterly. "I had no right? You slept with my wife, Ryan. You betrayed me. Both of you did." The room was a storm of whispers and gasps. Our friends, people who had known us for years, looked at them with disgust. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, please." Let's talk about this privately. Privately? I scoffed. Like how you privately screwed my best friend? Ryan clenched his fists. You think humiliating us like this makes you better? I stepped closer, my voice deadly calm. No, Ryan. What makes me better is that I never betrayed the people I loved. Emily sobbed. Please, Daniel, don't do this. But it was already done. Phones were still buzzing. People forwarding the emails, sharing the proof. Within minutes, the damage spread like wildfire. Emily and Ryan's reputations were ruined. And I wasn't finished yet. Emily collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands as sobs racked her body. Ryan stood frozen, his jaw clenched, his fists trembling at his sides. The room was still filled with a stunned silence, punctuated only by the occasional ping of notifications as people continued to read and share the damning evidence. I could see the shift happening in real time. Our friends, people who had laughed with Emily and Ryan just minutes ago, were now looking at them with disgust, disappointment, even pity. Jesus Christ, Ryan, muttered Mark, one of our oldest friends. With Emily? And behind Daniel's back? Ryan's face turned red. It's not like that, he snapped, his voice desperate, defensive. You don't know what's been going on. You only know what he's showing you. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. Oh, so you didn't sleep with my wife? You didn't lie to me for months? I pulled out my phone, scrolling. Should I read your emails out loud? Maybe the one where you said, let me find it, here. I can't stop thinking about last night. The way you moaned my name while Daniel was sleeping just down the hall. Gasps rippled through the room. A couple of our friends shifted uncomfortably, unable to look at either of them. Emily's sobs grew louder. Daniel, please. Please what, Emily? I interrupted sharply. Please not expose you for the lying, cheating person you are? Please just take the betrayal quietly and let you two continue sneaking around behind my back? Her lips trembled, but she had no answer. Ryan ran a frustrated hand through his hair, his entire body tense with barely contained anger. You have no idea what our relationship was like, Daniel, he spat. You were never there for her. She needed someone, and you were too busy working and… I took a step toward him, my jaw tight. Don't you dare try to blame me for your lack of morals. If Emily had a problem with our marriage, she could have talked to me. She could have left me. But instead, she decided to crawl into your bed. And you? I pointed a finger at his chest, fury surging through me. You were supposed to be my best friend. You stood next to me at our wedding. And all that time, you were waiting for your chance, weren't you? Ryan's eyes darkened, but he had no words. Because he knew I was right. Emily sniffled, her mascara streaking down her face. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I shook my head. No, Emily, you just didn't want to get caught. Silence. Then, from the other side of the room, Claire, one of Emily's closest friends, crossed her arms, her expression ice cold. So that's why you were always so weird about double dates. You didn't want to be around Daniel and Ryan at the same time because you knew you'd slip up. Emily flinched. Claire, please. But Claire wasn't finished. God, Emily, I defended you. Every time someone joked that you and Ryan were a little too close, I told them they were crazy. I told them you'd never do something like this to Daniel. And the whole time, you were doing exactly that. She shook her head in disgust. You make me sick. Ryan turned toward his fiancée, Jessica, who had been standing silently in the corner, pale as a ghost. Baby, please, he started, reaching for her. She stepped back, repulsion clear in her eyes. Don't, she whispered. Ryan froze. Jess, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, she snapped, her voice shaking with rage. I understand that the man I was supposed to marry has been screwing his best friend's wife behind his back. I understand that you've been lying to me for God knows how long. And I understand that I want absolutely nothing to do with you ever again. Ryan paled. No, Jess, don't say that. We can fix this. She let out a bitter laugh, her eyes flashing. Fix this? Fix this? You think we can just slap a Band-Aid on this and pretend you didn't betray me in the worst way possible? She took off her engagement ring, held it up for a moment, then let it drop to the floor with a quiet clink. Ryan's face twisted with panic. Jessica. But she was already walking toward the door. We're done. Ryan turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Daniel, man, please, you don't have to do this. We can talk. Just you and me. I stared at him, unblinking. We're not friends, Ryan. We never were. And with that, I turned my back on him. Emily reached for my arm. Daniel, can we talk? I stepped away. We're done too, Emily. Her breath hitched. You don't mean that. I gave her a long, hard look. Oh, I do. And then, without another word, I walked out the door. Behind me, I heard the chaos unfold. Jessica's car peeling out of the driveway, Ryan cursing under his breath, Emily breaking down into hysterical sobs. But I didn't care anymore. The truth was out, and I had one. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to cool the fire raging inside me. I could still hear the aftermath playing out behind me, Emily crying, Ryan trying to salvage what little dignity he had left, murmurs of shock and disgust from our so-called friends. But none of it mattered anymore. I had done what I came to do. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel as a wave of emotions crashed over me. For months, I had been living a lie, believing I had a faithful wife and a best friend who had my back. Now, I knew the truth, brutal, gut-wrenching, undeniable truth. And strangely, I felt lighter. No more second-guessing. No more wondering if I was just being paranoid. No more doubts. Just clarity. As I drove home, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages poured in, some from mutual friends expressing their shock, some offering support, and others too afraid to take a side. But there was one text that stood out. Jessica, thank you for exposing them. I can't believe I almost married him. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. Me, I'm just sorry you had to find out this way. Her response came almost instantly. Jessica, better now than after I walked down the aisle. You saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. That hit me harder than I expected. I had been so focused on my own pain that I hadn't thought about how much Jessica had lost too. She wasn't just walking away from a cheating fiancé. She was walking away from years of trust, from the future she had planned, from everything she thought was real. Just like me, I sighed, tossing my phone onto the passenger seat as I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark and silent, but it no longer felt like home. It was just a place filled with memories I no longer wanted. The next morning, I woke up to reality slamming into me all over again. Emily had tried calling me 12 times. When I ignored her, she switched to texting. Emily, Daniel, please, we need to talk. Emily, I never wanted this to happen like this. Emily, please come home so we can work this out. Emily, I still love you. I stared at her words, shaking my head in disbelief. Love? She had no idea what love was. I typed a single response. Me, we're done. Don't contact me again unless it's about the divorce. Then I blocked her number. There was nothing left to say. Over the next few days, the fallout of my revelation spread like wildfire. Ryan lost everything. His engagement to Jessica? Over. His reputation among our friends? Shattered. His professional life took a hit too. Turns out, some of the people at the gathering worked at the same company as him, and they didn't take kindly to his betrayal. Word got around. By the end of the week, his boss had put him on indefinite leave. Emily didn't fare much better. Her friends, people she had known for years, distanced themselves from her. Claire, who had once been her closest confidant, made it clear she wanted nothing to do with her. And then, there was her family. Her mother called me, voice heavy with shame. I don't know what to say, Daniel. I raised her better than this. I didn't have an answer for her. Because, honestly, I didn't care anymore. I had spent enough time hurting. It was time to move forward. I met with a divorce lawyer the following week. I want this to be quick, I said. I don't want a drawn-out battle. I just want to be done. He nodded. Given the circumstances, you have the upper hand here. Infidelity is hard to dispute when there's concrete evidence. He wasn't wrong. Emily had no choice but to agree to my terms. She knew she had no leverage, no way to spin the story in her favor. I walked away with everything I had built. She walked away with nothing. And that was exactly how it should be. The day the divorce was finalized, I expected to feel something: anger, grief, maybe even relief. But as I stepped out of the courthouse, paperwork in hand, all I felt was nothing. Not numb, not broken, just done. Emily had barely spoken during the proceedings. She had signed the papers with trembling hands, her face pale, eyes hollow. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. Ryan wasn't there. I had heard through the grapevine that he was spiraling, drinking too much, barely holding onto his job. Jessica had moved on without looking back. She had blocked him, sold the engagement ring, and was already planning a fresh start. Good for her. As for me, I had a decision to make. That evening, I sat alone in my half-empty house, staring at the walls that had once held so many memories. Every room was tainted. Our wedding photos, our anniversary gifts, the little notes Emily used to leave for me. I couldn't stay here. I didn't want to. So, I put the house on the market the next morning. I didn't tell Emily. She had no claim to it anymore. 2 weeks later, I signed the sale papers and packed up what little I wanted to keep. Everything else? I left behind. The furniture, the dishes, the decorations, none of it mattered anymore. I needed a fresh start. I moved into a new apartment across town, away from the reminders of my old life. It was smaller, quieter, but it was mine. For the first time in a long time, I woke up without the crushing weight of betrayal sitting on my chest. I started focusing on myself. I hit the gym again, channeling my frustration into something productive. I took up old hobbies, reading, hiking, even learning to cook. And slowly, the pain faded. It didn't disappear overnight. Some days, I still found myself replaying everything in my head, wondering how I had been so blind. But I refused to let it define me. I was moving forward. And then, one day, I got a message that made me realize just how far I had come. It was from Emily. I had unblocked her number weeks ago, not because I wanted to talk, but because I no longer cared if she tried to reach out. Her message was short. Emily, I miss you. I stared at the screen for a moment before shaking my head. Of course she did. She had lost everything. Her reputation, her friends, the life we had built together. And now, when there was no one left to catch her, she was looking back. I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted the message and blocked her again. Because the truth was, I didn't miss her. I didn't miss the lies. I didn't miss the deceit. I didn't miss the woman who had shattered my trust. I had spent enough time grieving the past. Now, I was looking ahead, and for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright.